Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Wine's World. I'm going to do some cooking today, carnival cooking. This is a recipe called eggs Sardou, which is a kind of version of eggs Benedict in a way, and comes from New Orleans and is a very famous brunch dish. And it has some kind of tricky little cooking bits in it. It's a base of creamed spinach with artichoke bottoms on top, then poached eggs and hollandaise sauce. Well, the creamed spinach, and you can see the creamed spinach is going to start here. I've got some leeks chopped up. Normally you'd use shallots, but I'm a leeks fan, and garlic. I'm going to make the hollandaise sauce, and I have a sort of improvised double boiler, and in the bottom of the double boiler you can see I've got some lotus roots because I absolutely cannot find artichokes here anyway, so I'm going to poach them in the bottom, and meanwhile I'm going to sit the eggs on top, and I'll show you how everything goes once we get started. Alright, so let's get started. I've got about a tablespoon of butter in my skillet with some chopped leeks and one very finely chopped clove of garlic. I'm going to turn it on to medium heat. I'm just going to sweat the leeks and the garlic just to release a little bit of flavor. And if you know anything about Louisiana cooking, and there's two types of Louisiana cooking. There's Cajun, which comes from the western part of southern Louisiana, and Creole, which comes from the eastern part, and that's where New Orleans is. And this is a Creole dish. But whether it's Creole or Cajun, they always say, whenever you start a dish, first make a roux. Just about everything they make, they start with a roux. Now, roux is a mix of fat, in this case butter, and flour, and you can make different kinds of roux. You can make the very dark roux that they use for gumbos. And a dark roux can take a very long time to cook, because you have to be very careful that you get it nicely darkly brown, but not black, of course, and even, and to do that you have to be very slow. Now this is going to be a white roux because I'm making a cream sauce for the spinach. So I've got the butter in there. I'm now going to add some flour. It's about half and half butter and flour. I think that's about right. And that's for thickening, and I'm going to be using mostly milk to make my cream sauce. But I'm debating, because you can actually use whole cream if you want to, or you can use half and half. I think I'm going to start with milk, see what happens, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to add some cream, just because I have it on hand and I like cooking with cream. So first of all, we have to just cook this down a little bit, And now turn off the heat for the moment. I'm going to add the milk. Just going to add a little bit at a time, and I'm going to be stirring all the time. I want fairly low heat. And in order to get everything to work properly, you have to add the milk slowly. And once the milk and the roux have combined adequately, then you can be a little bit more aggressive. But I'm just going to start off slowly. Now you can add a lot of things to the cream sauce, and if you're just making creamed spinach as is, then like for a side dish, a lot of people add something like a grating cheese, but this is going to be the base of another dish, and I think cheese is going to be too much. So there, we're just about there, and I'm tempted to add cream at this point. Just a little bit of extra richness. I could add a little bit of nutmeg, but I'm not inclined to. Salt, if you want. I never cook with salt, so I'm not going to. That's just perfect. That's heated through nicely. Now what I'm going to do is add some fresh spinach, and I'm just going to wilt it. So all I want to do at this point, because I've still got a lot of other things I have to do, so I'm just going to wilt it and combine it with the cream sauce. I will heat it through when I'm plating up, but I don't really want the spinach to cook a whole lot, apart from anything else, because it'll get watery. That's looking just about perfect. So I'm going to cover that and let it sit. I'm only making enough for one today because I live alone and I don't want to be making more than one, because this dish will not keep. You can't put it in the fridge and have it tomorrow. It's got to be eaten fresh. So I'm going to make one version, which means making not too much hollandaise sauce. Couple of poached eggs, I think, and that'll be it. So now let's turn to the hollandaise. Now, as I said, this is going to get a little bit noisy, so I'm not going to be able to do it all for you. I'm going to show you a little bit. I've got the water starting to heat, and in the pan I've got my whisked egg yolks, a little bit of lemon juice and some butter, and I'm going to keep adding the butter because I want to make an emulsion, and I have to keep whisking fairly vigorously because I don't want the eggs to cook. The butter will melt very quickly, and as it's melting I need to add more. Right now the water's not terribly hot, so I'm going to just pay attention to what I'm doing here. I'll make some stills for you so that you can see it as it's going, and then at the very end I'll show you the finished product. And then the last step will be to poach eggs and then put everything together. So at this point I had been working for about 10 minutes, and the proportions are 2 egg yolks and a stick of butter. So it's a lot of butter, takes a lot of time to incorporate. You have to be stirring like crazy, and you have to watch the heat. Now at this point I actually didn't have the pan that I was using over the heat because it retained a certain amount of heat, and so you have to kind of juggle it around, put it on the heat, take it off. Don't let it sit too long, the eggs will scramble. And you can see here about the size of butter that I put in each time, just a spoonful. Stir vigorously until it's melted and combined, and then add another knob of butter and keep working until you get to this point, and by this point it's all fairly thick and you're about ready to go. And I'm going to poach the eggs next, and I can keep the hollandaise sauce warm long enough, and I'll also just put a little heat under the cream spinach when the eggs are about ready, and then plate up. Alright, so here's our final step, poaching the eggs. I'm just going to poach one. I've got some simmering water in a skillet, and I've cracked an egg into a bowl, and you do this so that you don't make too many mistakes. In fact, the first egg I cracked had a broken yolk, and I don't want that. Let's hope this works better. I've got it in a bowl. I'm just going to slide it into the simmering water. Perfect so far. See if I can get a better shot there. There we are. And all I'm going to do, I'll put a few tablespoons of water over the white. Just to cook the white. I want to cook the white. I do not want to cook the yolk all the way through. I do want the white to be completely firm, and you can see it's just about done. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to let that finish off, and meanwhile let's plate up. I don't think I've ever shown plating up before. I don't know why. Anyway, here's my plate, and I'm going to start with a base of cream spinach. Cream spinach I reheated just so that it's nice and warm. Usually, I didn't do it today, but usually I actually use warmed plates as well, because that just helps keep everything nice. Now, if you're using artichoke hearts, you will use 1 per egg. I'm using lotus root, which I think has a relatively similar flavor to artichoke hearts. I mean, it's not the same obviously, but it's not horribly different. Now the trick is to get the poached egg on there, and voila. And finally the hollandaise. And you have eggs Sardou. Well, I apologize for the focus as I was plating up. It proved very difficult to have a focus accurately on a white plate. But here's the real deal. And now in this next image you'll see that I kind of chopped everything up, and I know that's awfully infantile of me, and normally I don't do this kind of thing. I used to have a very good friend who did it with all of his food. He used to chop it and push it all together and then eat it with a teaspoon. In fact, I had several friends who used to do that. I don't normally do that, but I do it with egg Sardou because the cream spinach and the egg yolk and the hollandaise sauce all complement each other, and they need to come together, and the best way to do it is just kind of chop things up and then eat them. And it really was quite delicious, and I made another one, and so everything is now all gone, and I will be back on Friday with some more musings. But meanwhile, please tell your friends, please like, please subscribe, and I will give you a new turn around the block having something to do with Carnival, I expect, on Friday. Have a good week.